What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish at the Moment. Today I'm preparing for another Catch 15 challenge. This week I'm heading to Table Rock Lake in Missouri. It's the middle of September, water temperatures are falling a little bit from a recent cooling trend, and I think the fishing is going to be decent but not great. Overall in September, the fishing is pretty brutal on Table Rock when you don't have forward-facing sonar. To remind you of my Catch 15 rules, I basically try to catch 5 bass for 15 pounds with no practice, no info, 8 hours of fishing, and no forward-facing sonar. In past tournaments in September and October on Table Rock Lake, when they didn't have forward-facing sonar, it usually took anywhere from like 13 to 14 pounds a day if you're fishing a 2 to 3 day event to win the tournament. If it's a single day shootout, maybe someone catches 18 pounds one day, but usually if you catch 15 pounds, even in a single day, you're gonna be in the top 5 in pretty much any event, again, without forward-facing. And there are some strategies that I've found over the years that I feel like I can implement to catch 15 pounds, but it's definitely going to be a challenge. Now I wanna walk you through kind of my plan A and plan B as I head out to the lake. My main plan is going to be heading up the James River and trying to find fish offshore. There are usually a few offshore schools that'll still be set up in the middle of September all the way up until October if you hit it right. Now, I haven't been up the James River on Table Rock in over 2 years. I haven't gotten any info, so I don't know if I'm actually gonna find these schools of fish. We may get up there and there are no schools, but ideally we're gonna at least find one group of fish that'll help us get our day started. I may have to try a bunch of different strategies to put 5 in the boat, but to start off, my game plan is to crank some main lake points that are close to the main river channel. There are a few points and a few of these drop-offs that I've caught fish on this time of year, August, September, October, up the James River in years past, and my go-to bait has been a deep diving crankbait. The one that I'm going to have tied on heading to the lake this time is the Blitz Magnum EXDR. It's an OSP crankbait that dives up to 30 feet. The fish on Table Rock can get pretty deep this time of year, as deep as 25 to 30 feet on these points, and this crankbait allowed me to hit the bottom and target any schools of fish that are still down there. It's also a bait that's a little bit different from what other anglers are throwing. A lot of guys might throw football jigs or maybe a flutter spoon hair jig, stuff like that on those fish, and fewer guys are cranking. And I've caught some really good fish on this bait in September and October on Beaver Lake in kind of a similar situation, though again, we're on Table Rock and not Beaver, so kind of hoping it translates, and I know I can catch those fish without forward-facing sonar if I can graph them up with my 2D sonar and downscan, side scan. Now, the crankbait is not going to be the only tool I'm going to implement. It's just the best tool I know to get a big bite in the boat. So if I do find some schools and maybe I catch like a good one on a crankbait and they stop biting, I do have a few other baits that I have tied on. One of the baits I always have tied on as a backup bait when I have the James River this time of year is a Swimbait. This is just a 4-inch Big Bite Baits Pro swimmer, and I'm pairing it on actually a new jig head I found that I'm really excited about. It's the new Guppy head from Dirty Jigs in the 1/2 ounce 5/0 size. There's not a lot of jig heads or any that I know of that are on the market other than this one that match all of the components that I need to fish the swim bait where these fish are on Table Rock. The thing about this jig head that's great is that it's a heavier head, 1/2 ounce size, but it has a lighter wire 5/0 hook, so you can actually fit a little bit bigger swim bait on there, but it doesn't necessarily overwhelm the 4.2, 4.5 inch swim baits either. The lighter wire hook means I don't have to set the hook super hard when I'm fishing this bait down in the 20 to 25 foot of water I plan to fish it in. And it also has a 90-degree line tie, which will help keep that bait deeper along with that 1/2 ounce head. The plan is to fish this around these points, and I'm gonna be fishing it in 20 to 25 feet of water, maybe down towards the bottom, or maybe off the point for fish that are sitting around standing timber, or just off the point, maybe suspended over the channel, over 50 foot of water, but only 20 foot down. And most of the swim bait hooks that are like a 5/0 have a very stout hook, or they have like a 30 or 60 degree line tie. But with that 90-degree line tie, again, it keeps that bait down deeper, so I don't have to reel that bait as slow. The faster you can reel the swim bait this time of year, a lot of times the more bites you're gonna get, but to keep that bait deep, most of the time you have to just crawl that bait down there. So by basically setting your swim bait up with this jig head, you're able to fish it faster, deeper. And that's why I'm also not going to like a super big paddle tail swim bait. This Big Bite Baits Pro swimmer is a little bit thinner profile, so it doesn't pull as much water, again, keeping it a little bit deeper. So that's why I go with this setup right here. I'm just pairing it on some 12-pound fluorocarbon to again help keep that bait deeper, and I'm throwing it with a Denali 7'2", medium heavy power, fast action worm and jig rod in the Covert Light lineup. Just have a Max, was this a Max X? I don't know, it's a Black Max version reel that I got a few years ago, 6-to-1 gear ratio reel. I forgot to mention the gear for this big Blitz Magnum. I'm just throwing this on the Denali Lithium Pro 7'10" extra heavy, moderate action Magnum crankbait rod. And this rod has a little bit of give to it. It's great with these big Magnum crankbaits. Just pairing that with some 15-pound fluorocarbon line and a 5-to-1 gear ratio Black Max. They don't make anymore. It's the Black Max winch, but had it for like 5 or 6 years. But I like that 5-to-1 gear ratio reel with those really big crankbaits. Gives you a little bit more torque to get those fish in the boat and to reel that bait all day. A lot of times these big crankbaits will wear you out. So that 5-to-1 gear ratio just makes it a little bit more pleasant cranking a big crankbait like this all day. The last bait that I'm going to drag around offshore if I find some schools is a football jig. I have been experimenting with a bunch of different football jigs lately, and one that I've really liked, especially around rock, is this Picasso 3/4 ounce tungsten football jig. The tungsten football jigs are interesting because I was kind of like skeptical about them. They're more expensive and I didn't know if it was worth it, but they fall so much faster than your standard jig. It also has a smaller profile skirt, so it falls really, really fast and you can feel the bottom extremely well with this jig. When I'm fishing in that 20 to 25 foot zone, it's great to get that bait down there quick, drag it on the bottom. It's great for spotted bass and it catches big largemouth as well, has a nice stout hook on it. And it's just a different profile, something different these fish are not used to seeing, especially in that 3/4 ounce weight. When I maybe hop the jig or you kind of like stroke the jig, it's called stroking the jig, where you pop your rod up, it brings that bait up, it falls to the bottom, hop it again, let it fall back to the bottom. It's a great technique for getting those suspended fish or fish that are a little bit more lethargic to bite at times. And this jig will fall a lot faster than your standard jig, hopefully giving me a little bit of an advantage over other anglers that are maybe dragging jigs out there as well. So I'm just always trying to experiment with different baits, different setups to give myself a little bit of an advantage. Kind of like with that swim bait head, reeling it a little bit faster, with the big crankbait, fishing a crankbait a little bit deeper, and with that football jig, having a jig that falls a little bit faster with a smaller profile. All those things give you slightly different, or give the fish slightly different looks from the other anglers, and it just gives me more confidence that I'm actually going to get those fish to bite if I do find a school. I'm pairing this up with some 15-pound fluorocarbon line again. This is just like a Quantum Pulse. I have no idea. I found them on sale for like 20 bucks one time, and it's just a 6-to-1 gear ratio reel. You guys know I don't really worry that much about my reels, but it's decent. It's not the best reel. And I'm just using a Denali Covert Light 7'2" heavy power fast action worm and jig rod. I like a heavy action rod when I'm dragging a football jig out deep. Has a little bit more backbone so I can really set the hook when it's out there way away from the boat, and that's my jig setup. And those are basically the 3 offshore baits I plan on fishing if I find some fish offshore up the James River on Table Rock. Again, there are a few points that I've caught fish on in the past that I plan to just go and graph. And honestly, I'm going to spend maybe about an hour and a half to 2 hours graphing around out there. And if I don't find fish in the first hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm actually going to abandon the offshore bite. I have a feeling I'll at least find like one spot where I can catch a couple fish, even if they're smaller spotted bass, just to get some keepers in the boat. But I just don't necessarily have a ton of confidence that I'm going to find my 15 pounds of fish just on one offshore spot. It could happen, I've done it before, but it's, again, a little bit of a gamble. So I need to have a backup strategy. And my plan B, which is actually a really solid plan as well, is to go further up the river and fish some channel swing banks with a glide bait. Now, a glide bait is not necessarily the lowest risk bait I could be throwing. This is actually a pretty risky bait to be kind of banking my challenge on, but I feel like if I can get 1 or 2 big bites on this glide bait, a 4 to 5 pounder, I can kind of fill out my limit with the offshore fish and a few other techniques that I kind of plan on experimenting with. And I know that this glide bait wins tournaments in September on Table Rock in the area I'm going. Over the years, it is probably getting more popular, so these fish might be a little more used to seeing these baits, but hopefully I can still run enough water and catch some of those fish up the river. The banks I'm gonna be fishing are basically, again, channel swing banks, wherever that creek channel swings into the bank and then starts to swing away. And I have a bunch of these marked from contour maps and just up the river, and basically there's a little bit of current that gets pulled this time of year, and when that lake starts to draw down a little bit for the winter pool, or if there's just some rain, those fish will tuck right up against those channel swing banks, and that's where you'll find some of your biggest fish up these rivers. This glide bait I'm fishing here is the Clutch Baby Boss. It's a new bait from Clutch Co, and the guys over there sent me a few of these to test out. The reason I'm going with this bait is because I feel like fewer guys have it around the Table Rock area. A lot of guys throw the KGB Chad Shads and a few other baits that are local there. This is a bait that's a little bit more, I guess, just newer, and something about these glide baits, the fish will get pretty conditioned to a specific bait pretty quickly after like a year or so, and I found that I need to keep switching up which glide baits I'm throwing. So this bait might be great for like a year here, and then it might need to be switched out for another one again as the fish get conditioned. But this is the bait I'm gonna be going with, and I'm hoping that this will get me a few big fish in the boat. If they are short striking the glide bait, I'm probably gonna have to put it away after a few hours. Normally I can get a sense for if they're gonna eat it really well within the first hour or two, and hopefully in my Catch 15 challenge video, I'll be able to explain my logic and reasoning behind when I pick it up, when I put it down. And this is, again, kind of a risky gamble, almost like the offshore bite, but to catch 15 pounds this time of year, you have to take a little bit of a risk. You can't just go into this going for like a layup. There's areas on the lake where I could go drag a football jig on some rounded points and catch a limited spotted bass and smallmouth for 10, 11, 12 pounds, and then maybe try to get lucky and catch like a 3 or 4 or 5 pounder or a couple. But the chances of actually getting 15 pounds that way is very small. With this, I feel like my chances of catching 15 pounds are higher, maybe still only like 20 or 30%, but that's compared to maybe 5% the other approach. And so if I'm trying to get these challenges done, I have to take a little bit of a risk, especially without forward-facing sonar. As far as my gear with this, I'm using actually the exact same rod I'm throwing this crankbait on, that 7'10", extra heavy, moderate action crankbait rod. I'll link this down in the description. And I'm throwing a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel on this. I like a 7-to-1 gear ratio with these glide baits, even an 8-to-1. I just don't have any 8-to-1s. This is just a 7-to-1 gear ratio, Black Max or Max Z or X or Y, I have no idea. But 7-to-1 gear ratio reel, picked it up several years ago. And just throwing some 20-pound fluorocarbon on that. So that's kind of my plan B, is that glide bait bite. Again, kind of risky. I do have a few other baits tied on down here that I might throw, like a little crankbait and things like that. But I've gone and cranked up the river and caught a lot of like 2-pounders. Maybe you'll luck into like a 5-pounder every once in a while. But again, it's not the most consistent way to catch good ones. So I'm going to stick to the baits that I know are going to get me those quality bites. And hopefully I can kind of scrounge up a few of those if I mix and match these strategies. There's a couple other techniques that are kind of my plan C, or just something I'm gonna do if I see an opportunity present itself. One of those is throwing a buzzbait. This is a technique that works really well at times in certain stretches of the lake, especially if I can find some flat rock around the backs of pockets or in the mouths of little creeks and things like that. Sometimes if you find a nice shade pocket down the bank, you can also throw a buzzbait around. So I'm gonna have this tied on. I might only get like 1 bite on this, but it could be a 2.5 pounder that kind of helps keep the limit going. I'm just throwing this Scott Canterbury Pro Buzz buzzbait from Dirty Jigs. It basically holds a frog on the back really well. And in my last Catch 15 challenge, I was actually throwing this buzzbait. It's the Rusty Squeaker buzzbait from Picasso. It has this slapper blade. It's really, really loud. And this is great when the water is really dirty and I want to call those fish up out of dirty water. But because the water up James is not actually that dirty, it's probably going to be like maximum 2.5 foot of visibility. Like that's the dirtiest you're going to get. And a lot of it might be even like 3 foot of visibility. And because of that, I like to fish a buzzbait that's a little bit less obnoxious, I guess, and I like to throw that frog trailer on the back. I just find that they eat a little bit better in that slightly clearer water. And I'm just putting a little Big Bite Baits Pro Buzz Toad on the back, nothing crazy, and a trailer hook. Pairing that with a Denali Lithium Pro frog rod, 7'4", heavy power, fast action, and actually a moderate fast action. This rod has a little bit of give to it so that when these fish eat the buzzbait, it gives them a second to get the bait, just a tiny bit of give, not too much. And I'm putting this on 50-pound braided line. I always throw my buzzbaits on braid, never have any issues losing the fish, and you can cast it around the thickest cover, fish it through logs, things like that, and just hammer on them. So that's my buzzbait setup. And then the last thing I have going on here is a jig. A jig is always a great tool this time of year to put a fish or two in the boat. The one that I have right here is a new jig. Again, I've just been experimenting with different stuff. This is actually a jig I've been wanting to try for a while. It is the 5/8 ounce Matt Herron Dirty Jig's flipping jig. This jig is interesting because it has a pretty compact profile for a 5/8 ounce jig. And I feel like a 5/8 ounce jig is a great jig this time of year when the water temperature is still above 75 degrees because it falls a little bit faster than your standard jig. A lot of times that faster fall will get these fish to actually react, and you'll get some bigger bites with that faster falling jig. If you wanted to go catch a limit of fish, you might want to go to a finesse jig, or if you just want to go get more bites, smaller finesse jig, 7/16 ounce, 3/8 ounce, that's probably going to be your better bet. But if I just want to get one 4+ pound bite, I want to go with this heavier 5/8 ounce jig. This is just in a brown color with a Big Bite Baits college craw, kind of cut down and put on the back. Just a 4-inch college craw. It's a nice little cheap trailer that I like to use because it's not that expensive. It doesn't hurt the pocketbook. And I'm just pairing this on some 20-pound fluorocarbon with a Max Pro reel from Abu Garcia. Again, got this like an Academy 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not sponsored by Abu Garcia. It's just they're the cheapest reels, and I buy all my reels, so that's why I'm using them, and they work fine. Maybe not the best skipping reel, but it works, does okay. And for the rod, I'm just using a 7'4" heavy power fast action worm and jig rod from the Denali Lithium Pro lineup. Great jig rod for skipping boat docks. And I probably should tell you what I'm gonna do with this jig. I just started talking about the jig. I didn't tell you where I'm gonna fish it. The plan is to skip boat docks with this jig. A lot of times a boat dock bite can sometimes be good up these rivers on Table Rock, Beaver Lake, things like that, but it's very hit or miss for me. Usually I'll fish like 20 boat docks and get 1 or 2 bites. And the plan is to basically just run some isolated boat docks, fish them pretty quickly, and see if I can scrounge up a bite or 2 again. And honestly, my game plan, which maybe isn't the best game plan, is more to junk fish on this trip. You can see I have a bunch of different stuff on the boat, or on the deck of the boat, and my plan is hopefully to get a couple fish offshore, couple fish on the glide bait, or even one, and then a couple fish up between like the buzzbait and the jig, and just kind of hodgepodge around and get a few fish in the boat. I might get fortunate and catch all my fish on the crankbait, all my fish on the swim bait, all of them on the glide bait, don't really know, but I want to give myself those options because there's a very high likelihood that I don't catch anything on 2 of the 3 of these combinations, and my chances of catching 15 pounds are already pretty low. Without any practice, without any info, just going blind up these areas, I have to, again, take a little bit of a risk to get these fish in the boat. I feel like my strategy is sound. I know all of the techniques I'm using have produced quality fish for me in the past. I know tournaments have been won doing all these techniques. So I'm putting myself in a really good position to at least have a shot to catch 15 pounds. If it actually happens in the day, if I execute properly, if I run the right water, all that's kind of up to somewhat of a chance. And I can also obviously improve those odds with my skill and my decision making, and that's what these challenges are all about. And especially without forward-facing sonar, again, there's ways I could catch them with forward-facing. They're completely different from this, but that's not the goal of these challenges. If you kind of want to hear why, you can check out my last video. I kind of explained why I even started these non-forward-facing challenges. I did a video on Lake Hudson. It was pretty cool. If you haven't checked out my other Catch 15 challenge videos, I'll leave a link to a playlist with all of them in a playlist for you guys so you can check those out. And if you like this type of prep video and want to see more of this and also see my actual challenge out on Table Rock, make sure to subscribe to the Fish Moment YouTube channel so you don't miss that video. And other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you guys in the next video.